Hi, welcome to my channel Mostly Knitting. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. And if you're new here, I'm Tash, and this is a weekly podcast where I talk mostly about the knitting that I've been doing during the week, and I also put out regular tutorials. So it is Sunday the 13th of October, and I'm recording from Sydney, Australia. So I'm going to start with my finished objects, of which I have two, and I am wearing one, and this is Fjolla by Isabell Kraemer. So I knit it out of the recommended yarn, which is Myak yarns. It's a baby lace, so it's 100% yak, and this is the colorway Oatmeal. It's a really beautiful soft yarn, and it's actually held double. So I knit it to pattern except for the sleeve decreases, and I did go up a needle size. So the gauge on this pattern is 21 stitches, and you are meant to be knitting it on a 3.75mm needle, but I couldn't get gauge on that size, so I went, and I also found the fabric a little bit dense, so I went up to a 4mm needle size. I knit the 37 3/4 inch bust, and this turned out to be 36 inches, so I'm pretty much spot on gauge. So just going up that one needle size worked for gauge, and that's 4 inches of positive ease for me. The only other thing that I mentioned that I did differently, the sleeve decreases, they are sort of evenly spaced down the arm, but I didn't start the decreases until, until about sort of just as I was getting into my forearm, I think. So yeah, just about here, and then I think I decreased maybe every 9 rows instead of every 12 rows, just to get to the right final stitch count of, I think, 48 stitches. I did do, I mentioned previously, I did a tubular bind off on the neckline, but I actually don't think, I chose not to do that for the sleeve cuffs and the body, because I felt like I actually just didn't think it added anything, and I thought I actually preferred just a regular, in pattern bind off. It has this really beautiful lace detail down the sleeves, which I think it just runs all the way down, and there's sort of some clever work to sort of get that the pearls in this going into the pearls in the ribbing, just a little bit of increasing and decreasing to stay on stitch count, but having the pearls line up into the pearls in the ribbing, which I really appreciated. And it just has this lovely lace section at the neck at the front, but not on the back. And yeah, you can see it's just got really nice shaping for the sleeves. I think it's really elegant. I really like it. I'll stand up and show you. So it's 36 inches, so that's 4 inches of positive ease on me, and the sleeves I knit to 17.5 inches, so that just sort of comes I guess to about there, and I can bend my elbows and they don't, the sleeves don't ride up, so I'm really happy with that. And I think I knit it to 12.5 inches from the underarm to the bottom, and it is so soft. I actually wore it all day yesterday, and it was just beautiful and warm and soft and light, and yeah, I'm delighted with it. So for my size, I bought 5 skeins, which is what was recommended, and I definitely needed to get into the 5th skein, so that's just about 30 grams left. So it weighs 225 grams, and yeah, I've got 30 grams left of this ball. I'm not sure what I will do with the leftovers. I could, obviously yardage wise, if I held it single with something else, I could probably make a hat, because obviously 30 grams isn't really a lot to do much with, and I don't have more of this particular yarn to sort of, make something to color, but I could see myself buying more of this, so I'm happy for this to just go into stash, and maybe if something appeals to me in this amount, might work for it. But yes, I think it will just go in with my leftover stash. So I do have, I mentioned I have one other finished object, and it's a very small one, and it's the Skimmer Socks by Sheila Stromberg. I can't remember what number this is, maybe number 7. So I knit this out of Madelinetosh. I do have 2 of them. Madelinetosh sock in the colorway Earl Grey, which I think is actually a really pretty color. I think it looks particularly nice on the slip stitch heel. I did German short rows for the, wherever the short rows are here. I did German short rows, and instead of wrap and turn, and I did not do the extra rows in the heel tab. These are my heaviest of the Skimmer socks, because the Madelinetosh sock is such a heavy fingering weight yarn. So these together weigh 44.5 grams, and most of my others I've been able to get out of 34 grams, so more than 44 grams. So you do have to be a little bit careful with this pattern if you have a slightly heavier sock weight. And did I mention this is the Skimmer Socks by Sheila Stromberg? I can't remember if I did. Oh, and I also forgot to mention Fjolla was on the needles for 60 days, so about 2 months, and the Skimmer Socks for 55 days. So I think that was because I had 2 pairs on the needles at the same time, which I generally don't like doing. One thing I will mention, I think it's also particularly because this is a heavy sock yarn, and I kept to roughly the same stitch count, but when I did, so I knit them on a 2.25mm needle, which is what I knit all of mine on, and then a 2mm for the ribbing, so that was the same. But because the yarn is quite thicker, it just made for a really dense fabric. So it's all the same stitch count, but the fabric is quite dense and thick. So I guess that's why they weigh so much, because they're not really any bigger. The only thing I will say is they are a little bit, I had to actually redo the bind off on this one, because you're meant to keep it on your foot, because it's a no-show sock. To keep it on your foot, you really need to bind off tightly, which is often very, sort of counterintuitive. Everything is normally bind off loosely, but for these you want to bind off tightly. And after I'd bound off the first one, I felt like it was actually quite loose on my foot, so I undid the bind off and redid it. And I thought I'd just keep I haven't woven in this one end, because I thought I'd show you. You can see where the yarn's quite kinky and then it goes straight. So this is the extra yarn, like when I bound off more tightly, I sort of used this much less yarn. So definitely, obviously it worked. I did bind off more tightly and it does fit my foot better. So, and obviously once you're in the shoe, it's not going to come off, but I just really wanted it, I wanted it pulled in a little bit more. So that's how much less yarn I used by binding off more tightly. So anyway, those 2 are done, and yeah, I'm happy to have them off the needles, because 55 days, that's a long time, and you just get a bit bored of a project, and it's because of the dense nature of it. It was pretty hard on my hands, so that's probably another reason they took so long, is because I could only work on it just a little bit at a time. So that's it for my finished objects. My next segment is Friend from the Vault, where I show you something that I knit earlier. And today's is just a small little accessory, which is a hot water bottle. And the pattern is All You Need, a classic by London Leo. And I just used some leftover yarn. I'm pretty sure this is Cascade 220. I knit this in 2017. This is the second version that I made of it. I've actually made 3 versions. My first one in 2014. And for my first one, I gave it away, so I can't show you that, but I can put a picture up here. And I used 2 balls of a yarn called Peyton's Jet. That was just some, that was my first version, just to try it out. That was some yarn that I had in stash. Now, it's a free pattern, and it is written for a gauge of 18 stitches, but it's got really clear instructions on how to modify it. So my first one was 18 stitches and I pretty much knit it to pattern, but this one was more like 20 stitches. And you cast on the bottom with Judy's Magic Cast On, so you've got a seamless cast on, and then you do some increases, and then you work up. I did this in stripes. I think my first one I just did a plain white, but there are some beautiful versions on Ravelry where people have added, color work, and obviously that would probably be a really good way to try out color work if you haven't done it, because it's, you're sort of not too focused on like a whole garment, or and it's just got to fit a hot water bottle, and you can try it on the hot water bottle easily as you go. So the first one that I made it in like 3 days. So if you are using a yarn that's like an 18 stitch gauge, you could do it really quickly. And so I actually gave it as a gift to my mum with a hot water bottle inside it. So it's quite a nice, quick Christmas gift if you're thinking of knitting something, and the pattern itself is free, and you might have some yarn in stash. You might be able to try out a new technique. You could use, you can put anything on this. You could put cables, although if you put cables, you'd have to think a little bit about, because cables draw in the fabric, so you'd have to think a little bit about making some increases to make sure that that it still fits. So yeah, I don't know exactly how much yarn this used, but I know that it did use 2 balls of my Peyton's Jet. There's like over 1,000 projects on Ravelry, so you could take a look and see how much yarn other people used, but I thought I'd just show you this one. This one I think it took me 2 weeks in 2017, but I'm sure I was knitting on other things. My first one, like I said, only took 3 days. So that's my Friend from the Vault for this week. It's the what's it called again? It's All You Need, a classic by London Leo, a free pattern on Ravelry. So I'm up to my works in progress. I have 1 new work in progress and 3 existing. So I'll start with a new work in progress. This is the Audrey top by Petite Knit, and I'm knitting it using some yarn. It's Shibui Knit's linen, and a lot of it I had actually started a project called Hain and by Kristen Johnston, and then I undid that because I just wasn't liking it, and so I'm holding it double for the Audrey top. Now the Audrey top has a gauge of 20 stitches and 27 rows, and I did a provisional cast on for the front, and I had no idea what my gauge was, and I thought, well, I'll just use this front section as my gauge swatch. So I'm knitting this the same way I knit my black version, and that is to do a provisional. So the pattern is meant to be completely bottom up, but Petite Knit does put in instructions to do it sort of from this section, from the underarm, but using Judy's Magic cast on, and I chose not to do that with my black one, and I chose not to do it here. I just decided I'm going to do a provisional cast on for the front, knit up, provisional cast on for the back, knit up, and then put those two, cast on the stitches under the arms, unrip the provisional cast on, join them together, casting on the stitches under the arms, and then knitting down. And I'm glad I did that actually, because this has turned out to be much smaller. So it's kind of like my gauge swatch, and I ended up getting 23 stitches and 32 rows. So that's significantly smaller. So I'm just going to hold it up against my black version, and where it's meant to be, so it's a bit hard to see because it's black, but where it's meant to sit is this, with this provisional cast on, is meant to be at the underarm. So if I put that at the underarm, you can probably see if I place that at that is way too small. In comparison. Now obviously I could cast on more stitches under the arms, but that's really going to cut in quite close. So what I realized actually was, and also I'd have much less depth, and I thought, oh, I can figure out the depth because I'll just make the straps a bit longer. But I decided actually, if I bring it, it's hard to tell, but I'm going to bring it all the way up. I'll just if I bring it to the top where this is meant to be, it actually sits really closely on my black one. It just doesn't go out as far, and like if I put it right on top there, I don't know if you can tell, can you see how it's actually, it actually sits pretty closely. If I move it all the way up, it actually sits right on top of the black one, but it's just not as long. So what I'm going to do is, instead of unpicking, this is my workaround, instead of unpicking the cast on and then immediately going into casting on for stitches under the arms and for both the front and the back and then knitting down, that would be way too much in here and probably too high as well. So but because it sits really well on here, and I did a provisional cast on, and here these were decreases, I'm actually going to unpick it and go down and do a couple of increases. That way I'll get a little bit more width, a little bit more length, and obviously it's going to be a little bit odd because I've got I'll have decreases here and then increases down. But honestly, this is just a basic little casual top that I plan to wear with shorts to the beach or something very, very casual. It's not going to bother me that it's like decreases this way and a few increases down, and most of that's going to be sort of near my underarm anyway. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. I know it's kind of hard for you to see here, but maybe I'll put a picture of it sitting on top of both where it's meant to have been and then where I plan to move it up to, and hopefully from the picture you'll be able to see what I plan to do is to just work a little bit more down, and then until I get to like the width that I would want it to be, because even though I'm going to cast on stitches under the arms, this is really not very wide. This is tiny. Like if I put this where it's meant to sit, like here, it's like it barely covers my chest. But if I move it up here and then go a little bit longer, so I move it up higher and then knit a few more rows and a few more increases and then join, I think it's going to work. So yeah, really excited about that. I actually cast this on, so this has actually been on the needles for 16 days. I cast it on the plane on the way to Bali on our holiday, and then I put it against my black one, and I was like, oh, well, that's not good. And so I thought, I don't want to work anymore on it unless I sort of can figure out what I'm going to do with it. Otherwise I'm just, you know, putting more knitting, what is it, throwing more good after bad. I think it's something like about throwing good money after bad. Like once you've realized a mistake, sometimes we plow on and keep going. I thought, no, just pause and see if you can figure out what you're going to do. And then when I brought it home, so I did actually cast on for the back, and then I sort of realized that this is not really going to work. Like once I sort of really put this against my black one, I was like, but yes, now I've come home, I've blocked it, I've got to work around, but I'll do the back, and then I'll figure out how much more I need to do, and then join in the round and work down. So yeah, that's my I'm very happy because this is obviously a pattern I already had, yarn that I'd already purchased, so it's and like I think it's actually, the fabric is looking really nice, held double, so like I think it'll be, yeah, I think it'll be lovely. So, and I love this color. So that's a second Audrey top. And my other two garments that I have on the needles are tops as well. So I don't actually have a sweater on the needles at the moment. So I might actually get changed and try on one of my other garments so you can see how it's going. So my second work in progress, which I've got on the needles, is the Shore Tea by Anne Ventzel, and I'm knitting it using the recommended yarn, which is they're both by Isager. This is Trio 2 and Alpaca 1, and they are in the colours that Anne used in the sample. And I went up, I'm knitting the smaller size, which is a 37-inch bust size, and I went up a needle size from the 3mm needle to a 3.25, and yeah, I am glad I did, because the fabric was a little bit dense, and I also think it would have been a little bit small. The only thing that I'm regretting is that in the pattern it actually uses the same needle for the twisted rib, and it's a full twisted rib, so you twist the knits and the pearls. It's only about 4 rows here, but you use the same needle size. So because I'm knitting the body on a 3.25, I did the ribbing on a 3.25 as well, but it's kind of flaring. Can you see that? Flaring a little bit. So, and you do cast on here, so I am regretting not having gone down a needle size. I'm also regretting that I didn't just do a provisional cast on and then come back and do the ribbing later, because then that's an easy way to fix something like that. Just go, oh, that's flaring, I'm going to go down a needle size. So yes, so if I wanted to fix that, now I haven't blocked this yet, but if I wanted to fix that, I would have to I'd have to actually like insert a needle along the right leg of every stitch just underneath the ribbing, snip a stitch, undo all of that ribbing, and then knit up, which I obviously can do, but that's a lot more work, which is a bit of a pain. But anyway, I haven't blocked it, so we'll see what happens when I block it. It might sort itself out. It might not, in which case I will have to do that. But for now, I'm just pressing on because I really can't do anything else, and then I'll just, after blocking, I'll see how it goes. So I haven't finished the body, even though you might see I've got I have started the sleeves. I got to the point where I had run out of, this yarn, that Alpaca one, I bought 2 balls, which should be enough because there's 400 meters in each, but I finished the first ball, so I've got 2, so wherever, I can't remember which one is attached to which because I've got quite a mess here, but I just paused wherever I was once I ran out of that alpaca, because that's my only other ball, and I picked up the stitches for the sleeves. So you pick up for the sleeves, so it's got this, the interesting thing with this pattern is when you work the front down, and then when you work the back is about 24 rows longer than the front, so this here is meant to sit further forward, if you know what I mean, so because like at least 12 rows further forward, or I don't know, the body's a bit, like body's not flat, right? So over this curve, it is certainly meant to sit. You can see there, that's like this shoulder increases across there. And so when you pick up the stitches and you do short rows, they're not going to be symmetrical because of this line here. So I just followed the pattern exactly, and as you do the short rows, you start to increase, or you start to sort of create these extra lace. See, you can see that, look at that, right? Oh, not very good. I don't want to be like walking around like that and then go, oh, I need to adjust my top. So I'm really hoping blocking will fix that. Anyway, back to the sleeve. I think I've finished the short rows, and then now I'm at the point where I'm about to work down. But I was knitting this on vacation, and it was just getting a little bit cumbersome with balls attached everywhere. So I thought, I just put it aside and started working on something else. But I think I am about 8.5 inches down the body, so I don't have much left to go on the body. So what I will do is I'll finish the sleeve. I don't enjoy knitting when I've just got, you know, yarn everywhere. So I do want to finish this sleeve. I really love the sleeve detail where it sort of billows out just a little bit over the cuff. It just looks, I really like it. I think it looks really pretty. So I'll finish off this sleeve, and I'll probably block it as well, just to sort of make sure I'm happy with how everything's going, or just to get a sense of like if it grows in length at all, and then I'll come and finish off the body. I really love the heathering of these two, because these two are different in value. They, you know, even though they're both sort of creamy shades, I love the heathering that's happening here. Yeah, just really, and that is going to zoom by because I'm almost finished the body. So, I mean, I quite like the neckline. I don't usually love like that much of a straight across. I usually like it dipping a little bit, but anyway, we'll see. I'll finish this sleeve, block it, and if need be, I will. I'll come back and redo that, at least on a 3, maybe even a 2.75 millimeter. But we'll see. We'll see. I had the same issue with my Jupiter crop, and I feel okay enough with it that I haven't needed to change it yet, and I've worn it, and it's sat fine. So blocking can do wonders. If it can sort out this little bit, then I'll be happy. So let me see, is there anything else I want to say? No, I think that's yeah, that's fine. Oh no, I will mention, I'm going to mention it later in my acquisitions, but I will just show you these cute little stoppers. They are from this little kit that I'll go through it later, but Taci sent it to my mother-in-law, who Taci from Taci Studio, and these were stoppers that were in the kit, so they came in, and I got it off my mother-in-law when we met up in Bali, so because she's in America, so it saved a little bit on shipping. So yes, but that was sent to me. But anyway, I'll show that properly later, but I just thought I'd show that here while I had this on the needles. And I have actually, I may as well show my one last garment, and that is the Sellwood tee by Caitlin Hunter. So I have 3 tees on the needles at the moment. No, as far as garments, no sweaters, but 3 tops. One Audrey top, sort of like a sleeveless tank, completely sleeveless, obviously. Sellwood tee by Caitlin Hunter has no sleeves, it just sort of finishes like a vest, and then the short tee actually has elbow length sleeves. So they are all sort of quite different patterns, but again, all tees though. So I'm knitting this out of Orange Flower MCS Sport, and I have 2 balls of this. This is the first ball. I've got about 40 grams left on this ball, and then I've got another whole skein. I will probably alternate. I will at some point, but I'll alternate when I get to maybe about 10 grams left, then I'll do a bit of alternating. So I've made quite a bit of progress on this, because even though it's lace, it's very memorizable, and I also have repeats between every section, stitch markers between every repeat, I should say. And it's a 4-row repeat. It has been fantastic, both having those stitch markers, but also I think last episode I mentioned putting this twice sheared sheep marker on it, where it's sort of, you have one marker for if you're doing just a plain knit, and then this one says D for decrease, and the idea is, you swap it if it's a knit row or a decrease row, but instead for me it's where I'm slipping these stitches. Every other row you slip them, so it's been really helpful for me, especially when I put it down and come back to it. I can see, is this, I'm on the K, so that is a knit row, so those slip stitches, I'm on the row where I knit them, and then if I had it on the other section, after I put it down and picked it up, I'd go, oh right, I'm slipping them. So that has been invaluable for me, because I just know automatically, right? I don't have to inspect. Sometimes it can be hard to tell if you've been slipping those stitches or knitting them, or how many rows above the knit, because there's a knit 4 together row. Obviously if I'm on that row, I know I'm slipping, but on the other 3 rows it's a bit hard to tell. So yes, and I have actually had to undo a couple of rows from getting that wrong. So yes, I've been very happy to have that. I'm knitting the smallest size, which is a 35 and a quarter inch bust circumference. I blocked it when I was about halfway after 9 repeats, and I've done 19 now, 19 repeats. So I think that's about 9 inches. So I do have at least, I reckon, maybe 3 more repeats to go. I think what I'll do is I'll get up to 20 and then I'll block it again and just sort of see how it's looks so tiny, but obviously with lace it just stretches out massively. So yeah, let me see, was there anything else I was going to say? Yeah, I think I will block it again. It has a knit 4 together, so I'm using my Chowgu needles, which have very sharp tips, which is very handy. And I'll mention, I may as well just stay in this and then I'll get changed for my next segment. My last work in progress, so I'm down to 4, but I am going to cast on a new pair of Skimmer Socks. I'll get into that in my plans, but at the moment I have 4, which is pretty exciting. It's been nice because I started, I should have said this Shaw tee has been on the needles for 37 days and the Sellwood tee for 35 days. So I obviously started these 2 garments within a couple of days of each other, which I don't normally like to do. It just gets a bit, then it feels like everything's been on the needles for a long time. So, but I reckon I might, maybe by next podcast, I might have this one done because I've got 2 sleeves and only a little bit left on the body. Yes, so my last work in progress is Pure Joy by Joji Locatelli. I'm knitting this out of Skein. I forgot to mention, with my Sellwood tee, I'm knitting it on 1 needle size smaller, which is a 3.75mm instead of a 4mm. Other than that, I've done everything to pattern. So Pure Joy by Joji Locatelli. I'm also knitting that on 1 needle size smaller, a 3.75mm needle. I'm using Skein Classy, which is a merino silk blend. This is the colorway Mist and In the Navy. So there's lots of nice contrast here. It's a 2-color shawl. You're knitting mostly with this color and then you finish with this color as the border. And let me see where I'll show you the right side. I'm on this wedge here. I've got this wedge and 1 more wedge to go, and I've got about 40 grams left, I think. Yeah, 44 grams left of this one. So hopefully that will be enough, but I do have a second ball if I need it. Yeah, so it's looking really nice. I was a bit unsure. I thought, like, when I was working on it initially, that this yarn was a little bit messy, but then I blocked it after I'd done about 2 sections and it really neatened up. Like, I think it looked a lot nicer after blocking, so that gave me enough comfort just to keep going. And as most things, especially garter as well, can look a bit, how do you do, but then after blocking, yeah, I think it's gonna be really pretty. Now it's called Pure Joy because I think the idea is it's meant to be pure joy knitting, this pattern, and it is very easy as long as you're kind of consistently working on it. What happened was I put it down for a few days and then I honestly, because I hadn't done that much of it, I'd sort of forgotten what I was doing and I've forgotten which side I was meant to be on, and yeah, and I got myself quite confused twice. I put it down for a few days, picked it up, and then I was like, what am I doing? And it took me about half an hour, 45 minutes to figure out where I was and what I was meant to be doing. And then I was like, okay, yeah, I got this. Knit on it a bit and then put it aside, waited another few days, same thing. What am I doing? Where am I at in the pattern? And I think I'd sort of stopped at an odd point and I got myself quite confused, knit completely a whole row wrong, and then had to undo it and say, okay, no, I actually need half an hour to sit down and work out where I'm at, count my stitches. So when it is Pure Joy, now I've actually knit probably a few wedges, like a little bit every day, and got a few wedges. Now I know where I'm at on it, and I have a stitch marker to help me, which I had before too, but I think I just got myself muddled. So as long as you don't put it down for a really long time, it should be fine. But for me, when I put it down for 3 or 4 days and I hadn't done enough of the pattern, it wasn't Pure Joy. It was actually really frustrating. But yeah, I've got it now, and yeah, I know what I'm doing now, and I've only got 2 more wedges of this to go, and then it's just one big chunk of this at the end. So that's been on the needles for 28 days, so about a month, and I'm not in a rush for this. It doesn't have, and I don't have any kind of agenda. Yeah, but I am really enjoying it now, and it is a really easy pattern. But I would recommend, until you've really gotten it sort of a rhythm on it, I wouldn't leave it for a really long time, or make some really clear notes, because it can be a bit confusing. Yes, okay, well, maybe that's just me, but that was my take on it. Right, so that's it for my works in progress, just the 4. Oh, look at that. It's just not good. I feel like I don't want to knit any more on it until I've blocked it, but anyway, I probably will finish the sleeve and then I'll block it. Right, so I'm up to acquisitions and plans, and I just have the one acquisition, and this was what I referred to earlier, which was a gift from Taci, who's Taci Studio, and it's this lovely little tin. It's a knitting and crochet toolkit. Now, I love having gadgets that make things easier, so that I don't have to work as hard in my knitting. And I'm always measuring things. So in this kit, I've got a pink one. I've got a tape measure. So this was sent to my mother-in-law, and she brought it when we met in Bali. And because I don't actually know what shipping would be like in Australia, but it's probably, because it's getting shipped from the US, it's probably pretty reasonable shipping from US to US, but I don't know what it would be to Australia. Anyway, probably pretty reasonable if you're ordering from America. But it's got a tape measure, it's got some stitch markers, so some of these sort of, thicker stitch markers, but then also a little tin, such a cute little tin of those other locking stitch markers that are just those little coloured ones. And I love locking stitch markers. It's got a little fix-it crochet hook and a tapestry needle. And the other thing, and the stoppers that I showed earlier that were on my shorty. And the other thing that Taci included, which wasn't in the kit, but let me see if I can find it. This is so cute. It's a little flower, like a little Stanley knife. Isn't that cute? So you can use that just to cut your yarn. Yeah, so this is so sweet. So I just want to say thank you, Taci. I really love it. I have like I've got one of these from Twice Sheared Sheep as well. I love being able to have something this small to just chuck in my project bag, so that I've always got whatever I need. And I always need tape measures and certainly crochet hooks if I drop something. So yeah, so thank you so much. I really love it. I don't know, because Taci sent it to me, I'm not sure what the shipping cost or what the cost of these are, because it was a gift. But yes, I'll put a link to her shop, and I'm sure the shipping if you're within the US or Canada would probably be quite reasonable. So that's it for my acquisitions. As for my plans, I did mention that I had finished a pair of Skimmer Socks and I wanted to start another pair. So I actually took this overseas with me because I thought I might get started on it, but I only just finished those socks the other day. So I haven't, and I promised myself not to have 2 pairs of socks on the needles. So I will start another pair of Skimmer Socks, and I'm going to use this yarn, which is some leftovers. This is, I'm pretty sure it's String Theory Continuum yarn. This is yarn that I used to make these socks. The colorway is called Resistor. And I used them to make these socks for my dad. Now, my dad has since passed, but these were socks that I made for him that he wore a lot, and they went in the washer and the dryer, and eventually they felted. And you can see how pilly they are. They felted, and now they fit me. And they're very thick, obviously, because they felted. But I wear them as bed socks now. And I love it. I actually bought these with my dad in mind, because the colorway name is called Resistor, and so my dad was an electronics technician, and these are the colors of there are these components called resistors that are in like a lot of, I don't even know, like in our phones, and the way everything is so small now, I don't know what they look like now, but in the big old TVs are these components called resistors, and they had all these bright colors on them. And so that's why I got it, to make these for my dad. And I thought, well, I do actually have enough. This was like a mini skein that came with it, and so it is the same yarn base. So I thought with the Skimmer Socks, they're actually sort of designed to use 2 different yarns, but I think what I'd probably do is just do the whole sock in, I'm pretty sure I can get it out of these 2 balls, and then just use the green for the ribbing. So they will be, because I don't have any I don't have anything at the moment that I can use for walking and knitting, and I need to get out and go for a walk. So it was too hot to do much walking in Bali, so I haven't done much walking lately. So I'm going to cast these on today so that I've got something when I go for a walk this afternoon. So that's my first plan, is another pair of Skimmer Socks. My other plans are 2 sweaters. Because I don't have a sweater on the needles, I thought I really want to make, I mean, it's coming into summer here, but that doesn't really matter for me. I just knit whatever I feel like knitting, and I like to have a variety of projects on the needles, and at the moment I've only got 3 tees, so I've got plans for 2 sweaters, but I'm not going to cast them on really close to each other. So I think I do plan to make both of them. At least I say that now. Probably next podcast I'll have them both on the needles, but we'll see. This is so I plan to make the clay sweater by Ozetta, and that was gifted to me by Gay, so thank you, Gay. I'm finally going to get around to knitting it. And this is the yarn called Loch Lomond, and I went to start it and then realised I only had bought 5 balls, which is 900 metres. 5 balls? 6? No, I bought 6 balls, but they're only 50 gram balls and 150 metres in each ball. So I actually went to my yarn store and bought another ball, and it was exactly the same dye lot. I was so happy. But I thought, what if I need 8 balls? And, I thought, well, you know what? And at the moment they still have the same dye lot, but they might run out of it. So this is going to be my next one. So I actually already did this swatch, and I got gauge. I didn't write down what needle size I used, but I'm pretty sure because it was so it's a textured pattern. It's 18 stitches and 34 rows. I don't know if I got row gauge, but I know I got stitch gauge, so I'm happy about that. And yes, I think that's going to be my next project on the needles. This is actually knit on a 5mm needle, and I rarely ever use anything bigger than max a 4.5. This is actually quite light and a little bit open, but because of the nature of the yarn, pretty sure it's woolen spun. Can you see that okay? There you go. It's quite lofty, so I think it will be quite warm but lightweight, because obviously with only 50 gram balls, 7 balls, it's going to be a 350 gram sweater. It should be quite nice and light. And it reminds me a little bit in colour of my of the Peer Gynt that I use for the Storm sweater, but that's a really heavy sweater, so that used 13 50 gram balls, so that's 650 grams. So in finishing this one, it's got quite a nice high neck, should keep me really warm, but only weigh and be quite. I plan to knit the smaller size, which is a 39-inch bust. So I think that would be like my Storm sweater, but a much lighter version. So if I start this now, I might even be able to get it done and actually even be able to wear it in November, like in the early mornings, before it gets too warm. So that's one of my upcoming plans for my sweaters, and I'll just go grab the yarn for my the other sweater I plan to make. The other sweater that I plan to cast on is the Moby sweater by Petite Knit, and I have some yarn that I bought recently from Great Ocean Road called La Bella DK, and I swatched for it yesterday, and I actually plan to make this not holding any mohair or anything with it, just as it is. So that's my swatch. And I hope you can see that it actually really has some nice heathering to it. I wasn't so sure in the yarn when I first got it. I thought, it doesn't have, it's a bit more solid than I'd hoped. But actually, because it's an alpaca wool blend, when I knit it up, I can really see the heathering. And it is actually quite, at first when I was knitting on it, somebody said, it looks like the same color as your sweater, but it's actually, this is much grayer. This is a much warmer brown. So I'm so excited to start this. So the Moby sweater has a gauge of 20 stitches, and unblocked this was 22 stitches. Now that I've blocked it, it's still a little bit damp, but it's mostly dry now. It's 21.5, and I'd say probably through wear it might stretch out to 21. So I plan to knit the smallest size, which is 40.25 inches. If I got 22 stitch, if it stayed at 22 stitch gauge, that would be 36.5 inches, which is 4.5 inches of positive ease for me. But it'll be a little bit bigger, because if at the moment blocked it's 21.5, I reckon I'll probably go to 21. So I'll put down here what that should end up being. So basically you take 40.25 and you multiply by, let's say I get 21 stitches, multiply by 21 and divide by 20, which is the pattern gauge, and that will be where it finishes up, like what the finished garment measurement would be, assuming all my, the rest of my because it's a very textured sweater, but if all of my other textured sort of stitches stay around that same gauge, so I should have at least 5 inches of positive ease, but probably not quite 8 inches of positive ease. So that's what I'm hoping, that it ends up about 5 or 6, because this is 4 inches of positive ease, which I think is really lovely. So I've bought 6 skeins of this, which is 1200 meters. I think that should be fine for, better be, for the Moby sweater. I'll just, you know, adjust a little bit with sleeve length or body length, but 1200 meters should be fine for that for me. And just, this is so lovely and soft. I've really been enjoying, like, obviously I'm doing some things like, this is, you know, quite, this is 100% linen. That's not so easy on your hands, and not as pleasant knitting, but knitting with, you know, like 100% wool or this lovely alpaca wool, that's going to be a really beautiful knitting experience. So, yeah, just, I really enjoy just watching, you know, it's kind of like with color work, as you watch the pattern develop with color, with textured stitches, watching, you know, as each section develops is really, it's really enjoyable. So I'm looking forward to starting that one too, but one at a time. I'll start with a clay sweater. It's, you know, it's a bit more basic, because the texture is just the, you know, the garter ridges, but that should be pretty easy, easy knitting. I don't know, I say I'm not going to start this soon, but I might, because it's just, this is so lovely and scrumptious. So, and I just really want to work with this yarn. So, yep, so they're my upcoming plans. So I'm up to what has caught my eye, just the one pattern actually, and that's Thistlewood by Jennifer Steingass, and it's a really beautiful colorwork sweater, which is what she's well known for, and she hasn't designed anything for a couple of years, so it was really nice to see this pattern released. And yeah, I'm really excited to do this one. I haven't got, you know, yarn or anything in mind yet. It's a fingering weight sweater. It's knit at a 23 stitch and, let me see, 23 stitch and 33 row gauge. It's got 2 colors in it, although some people in the testers, sorry, 3, like 1 main color and then 2 contrast colors, but some of the testers just used the 1 contrast color. Yeah, it just looks really beautiful. It's got color work on the yoke and then also on the cuffs, but you could, you know, you could do the color work on the cuffs or not, you know, obviously that's personal choice. I don't really love color work on the cuffs that much, so I'd probably drop that. And you can also make it short sleeve, so just depending. But I really love, there was somebody's version, I'll put a picture of it up here, with this sort of purple and mustard on a sort of an oatmeal-y background. That looked really beautiful. So, and I'm such a copycat. When I see something like that, I'm quite often like, yes, that's the one. I like that version probably the most. So if once I start looking for yarn for it, that's probably the colorway that I would go for it. I think it's really beautiful. There's currently, I'm not sure if it was like how long this, because she didn't mention, but there is a 20% discount at the moment, which is actually, the code is Thistlewood, and it's on in caps, and it's actually on her pattern page. So at the moment you can get 20% off. Yeah, so I think it's something that I've got a lot of, I've knit a number of Jennifer's patterns. They're really well written, and you know, she has short rows in it, and for this one they're placed underneath the color work, but I really do trust her patterns. I've knit so many of them, and yeah, they fit really well, and yeah, they're just really well written patterns. So that has caught my eye. I haven't figured out yarn for it yet, but I think it's beautiful. Right, so I'm coming up towards the end of this podcast today. Thank you so much everyone for the lovely comments on my Q&A video. I put that out while I was away in Bali, but recorded it before I left. And I had hoped to have a stash video released, but I still haven't finished, and I still have to finish actually organizing my stash and then edit the videos, and there's lots of videos in there, so that's still coming. Yes, I hope to get to it soon, but no promises. I think my next video won't be, so it's Sunday. I normally record on a Wednesday. I don't think I'll have enough content to do a recording Wednesday this coming week, so I think my next video will be about 10 days away, which I'll record on Wednesday the 23rd of October, and so hopefully I'll have a bit done then over 10 days. But it is, you know, for me, I've got school. Actually, I'll just talk a little bit about the Q&A video, and then I'll get into personal stuff. So I just want to say thank you for everyone who commented, particularly people who are left-handed knitters who explained a little bit about how that works for them and how they modify things. And I'm so impressed. Like, I think, you know, it's very much a right-handed world. I think 10% of people, it's a substantial part of the population, but things are mostly made for right-handed people. So I'm sure left-handed people are actually really used to problem solving and working things out to make it work for them, and that seemed to be the case for knitting. Although it sounds like if you crochet and you're left-handed, you can just use because it's predominantly a one-handed maneuver, I suppose, you can use your left hand for that. But with knitting, obviously 2 hands are involved. Even right-handed people hold the yarn in their left hand for continental knitting often. So in terms of actually which hand you hold the yarn in, it doesn't seem to matter whether you're right-handed or left-handed, but there does seem to be some differences, particularly to do with charts. But yeah, I found it really interesting hearing everyone's comments, so thank you for that. And the other thing I wanted to say thank you for was all of the recommendations for YouTube, other YouTube videos on knitting, so other channels. So I shared some of mine in that Q&A video, but a lot of people commented on the ones that they like to watch. So I've got a big long list to check out when I have some time. So thank you very much for that. And if you're looking for new podcasts to watch, you might want to take a look at the comments from that Q&A video and and see if there's any in there that sound interesting to you. And yeah, I'm looking forward to trying to checking some of them out. The other thing, so I already mentioned that about when my next video would be. So I think that's probably it for today, apart from personal stuff. So I'll get on to that now. If you're leaving me, thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back in about 10 days. So back onto my normal recording schedule of Wednesdays. My next one will be on the 23rd of October. So onto my personal stuff. I won't get into Bali because I've got so much, photos and videos and things, and I thought I'll share about that properly in my next video. But I have just come back from 2 weeks in Bali. It was very warm. It was a lovely holiday. My husband unfortunately got quite sick for a number of days there, but he recovered towards the end of the holiday, which was great. But it's not fun being sick when you're on holiday. So other than that, school starts on Monday, so it's Sunday now, so school starts back tomorrow. What other things have I got coming up? We've got a church weekend away next weekend, so that will be really lovely. Every 2 years, my church does like a whole church weekend away. And yeah, I went 2 years ago. That was our first one, and it was really wonderful. I went with my son. This year, I think my husband and I are going to go, but my son will probably not going. He's starting his year 12 tomorrow, which is a really big year for him. So that's coming up. The only other thing that I wanted to share, shows that I'm watching. We started watching Slow Horses again. The new season is out, and that's been a lot of fun. The other thing that I wanted to share is about 5 years ago, I read a book called The Alcohol Experiment by Annie Grace. And I'd been wanting to cut back on my drinking. I was just drinking more often, like in the evenings, more evenings a week, and more than I really wanted to. So I read this book about 5 years ago, The Alcohol Experiment, and it was this idea of just taking 30 days off. And I know that a lot of people do that. They do like a dry July or a sober October. There's, like initiatives to sort of, to just take periods off to let your body recover. It's good for your liver. Anyway, so I did that and I followed the experiment. And it was really interesting and eye-opening for me in terms of how, what actually happens in your body if you drink, and why, even if you decide I'm only going to have one drink tonight, but then you end up having more. And I found that interesting in terms of why that happens, that you sort of start with a plan and then the plan, derails. And so I was, it's been a long time where I've been thinking I do want to cut back, or I just want it to sort of not play such just not be drinking as often as I was. So not drinking as much and not drinking as often. And yeah, so anyway, but I found I would have a month off, and then I'd feel really good in that month, but then I'd sort of have one drink and then I'd start drinking again, and I'd be sort of back to where I was drinking, 5 nights a week. And yeah, and I thought, what? This is a cycle that I don't want to be in. And then I read a book or actually listened to it on audiobook, Alan Carr's The Easy Way. And I just thought, I'm ready. I don't really need alcohol in my life. It doesn't really add anything. And yeah, it can be nice, but I actually feel like it's more than it plays too much of a role in my life for what it brings. So yeah, so when I was away in Bali, I just decided, you know what, I think I'm done. So I've quit alcohol for good, and I feel great about it. I just feel like I don't need it in my life. So I thought I'd share that. It's obviously very personal. It's personal to me, and there's no judgment around it. It's very much my decision, and yeah, I feel great about it. I just don't want it in my life anymore. So yeah, so it hasn't been very long. I think the 2nd of October was my last drink. So I'm sober since October 3rd, and I don't plan for this to be a regular update thing, because that's just my life now. And yeah, really happy about it, but I thought I'd share about it here. Obviously that's very personal, and hopefully that isn't, I don't want it to be something that sort of anyone feels any judgment around their drinking, but I just know that it's something that I've talked with a number of my friends about, and a lot of them are in the same position where they're just finding that they're drinking more than they want to, or drinking more often, or a greater quantity than they would really like to, and it's just playing a bigger role in their life than they would want. So I know I'm not alone in it, and it's not for everyone, but I think for me, I feel really good about it. I feel really positive, and it's like a great decision for me, for my life. So I'm 51. I just want to be the best version of myself that I can be, the healthiest, and alcohol doesn't actually add anything. Like, it doesn't give any nutrients, just calories. Not that I'm not really that calorie conscious, but it's actually just, ingesting something that doesn't actually serve me in any way. So yeah, anyway, just thought I'd share that. That's probably it for me now for the week, and I will be back in about 10 days with another regular episode. All right, I'll see you then.